Hello again, everyone. It's Wednesday. It's a quiet week, so I forget the days. But I have been writing every morning, and now I'm sitting here with socks and reading Banana Yoshimoto. I just saw stuff about the Edinburgh Book Festival online. It was Richard E. Grant had been and was filming himself travelling down the country afterwards. I am aware, though, that the things I've seen about the Edinburgh Book Festival have all been stars and people off the telly, and that woman who gets on BBC News talking about opera, and politicians, and not many people who are just writers. And I know I bang on all the time about celebrity authors and how they get on my tits, and they've ruined publishing, and they've ruined bookshops and everything else. They've ruined books. I mean, I'll pick out one or two that should be allowed when the revolution comes to carry on writing books, and Richard E. Grant is one of those, and so is Bob Mortimer. Very, very few others. But it brought back all kinds of memories of being at festivals when you have experiences, good and bad. And the Edinburgh Festival in particular is one that's important to me because when I moved to Edinburgh as a first-time novelist and somebody who was finishing with his PhD and living away from my university town for the first time and moving to a city that felt very European and sophisticated, moving to Edinburgh when I was 25. I lived off George Street, at the end of which is Charlotte Square, which is where the book festival used to be. And it was like being in heaven. That first few weeks in Edinburgh and having the book festival right on your door, and all the events were really affordable as well. And we had 3 Waterstones right by us as well, and they always had events on too, almost constantly. So I was just running about all the time and seeing bits of theatre in attics and one-person shows and bands, and there were loads of bars, and it was a very exciting time. And not long after, I did my first event at the book festival. I can't think when it was, although I was there for things that Chatto and Windus put on in '95. My book had just been sold to them, and they invited me to various things, lunches and meeting people and going out for drinks and things. And I remember going to Marina Warner's lecture. She was always nice to me, and really interesting to talk to. I think it was a year or two later that I did my first event for the book festival. I think it was with Nicholas Blinko, but I'm not sure. And over the years, I did various things. When Strange Boy came out in 2002, they put me on with Anne Fine and Neil Gaiman, and we took Neil out for dinner afterwards at some Italian place, a whole bunch of us. And I kept going back. And even when I wasn't there, I would go and see friends there. So I'd be staying with my friend Stuart, and we'd go and see Steve Cole doing something or meet him afterwards. And then when my Mars trilogy came out, they would put me on. There was a nice woman in charge of the Children's Literature Festival, Janet, and she had me on a few years in a row doing workshops on classic novels that she knew I liked. Things like Frankenstein and The Dark is Rising and something else. And I'd give a lecture or do a workshop. And then I'd, whoops, battery going. And then I would be put on doing a reading from Lost on Mars or whatever was coming up. And I interviewed people as well. So I was doing the full the full term, and they were quite busy trips. So that was about 2017-18. At some point during that, that was when my friend Stuart challenged me to write a saga, and I began writing what became the first Elsie Mason book. It all seems a while ago now. Stuff that's pre-COVID. One of those last times I was there was when, and I think I've told this story before, when I sat in the author's yurt and saw the volunteers and the interviewers all sat together, and they took no notice of me at all, sat there, because they were having this conversation about, what are you doing? Can you come out tonight? And this woman saying, I have to interview these two old science fiction writers that no one knows and no one cares about. And she was stuck there having to do this. And her friends were complaining. And they said, should we know them? And she said, no, it's no one you should know. And she was completely shameless when later on I was one of the authors that turned up. And she knew that I'd heard her say this awful thing. Maybe that's the way to be, shameless and rude, and get away with it. The author's yurt was always a very funny place to sit. It always had really good food from Valvona and Krolla and good coffee. And you'd see the most amazing people coming in, sometimes behaving badly in private, which was hilarious. I remember Nicola Sturgeon coming in and wafting around like the Queen of the May, thinking she was it, leaving her palace, or whatever it is, the residency, the minister's residency, in Charlotte Square, and kind of strutting around, really full of herself, which, besides anything else, put me off her forever, really. Various other people, A.L. Kennedy, publishing a piece about how she was so spoiled and privileged to be an author. And then you saw her in person, and she was. They really sucked up to her. That was one of the things I didn't enjoy about those kinds of places. It was similar at things like the Cheltenham Festival. You watched a lot of sucking up going on. People sucking up to people who they thought should get it. And that was always very embarrassing for everyone. I always thought most embarrassing for the authors who really got off on it, who liked being treated like that. It always gave me a shudder. But on the whole, I think I always really enjoyed the Edinburgh Festival, apart from the kind of the occasional awful things. I always remember Simon Armitage saying hello and then taking me to meet his parents, who were sat there on a settee, because he knew I'd talk nicely to them. So there were kind of, real people, as well as the slightly haughty, hoity-toity, pretentious ones, which you get everywhere in every walk of life. I always loved the book tents. They always had a great selection of books. I've not seen the festival since it moved location. I can't picture it being anywhere other than Charlotte Square. I believe it's moved to the old hospital, which has strange associations for me because of Jeremy being ill there in the summer of 1997, but I'm not sure. I think it's there. Anyway, happy memories on the whole, I'd say, of the Edinburgh Book Festival. And every year I still miss being in Edinburgh during August. Because of that few years I lived there in my mid-20s, it kind of becomes inseparable from your life. That's so sentimental. Hopefully we're going to Scotland in September for a bit of a trip. So hopefully I'll record some of that so you can see it. Anyway, that's a bit of a ramble, having been reminded of the book festival. I have lots of stories about book festivals, thinking about it. Liverpool, King's Lynn, Lancaster, various London ones, Guildford. Over the years, Newcastle. Newcastle was one of the best because Julia Darling invented proud words, and it was a big gay book festival. And I was guest of honour, one of the guest of honours with Stella Duffy in 2001, and we had a brilliant time. Anyway, I'm not doing any festivals this year. They've forgotten about me, everybody. So I can have a quieter time, but it is nice to go to these things. Goodbye. I'll see you again soon.